Welcome to today's InsideSales.com webinar. We're happy to have you guys, and we are going to be talking about are your salespeople too nice to close the deal? And while we wait for people to just get logged in here today, we are going to go ahead and watch a quick intro video on science and sales.
We all share a universal need to progress and realize our potential. And we believe that science is the key to unlocking that potential. Science takes you from the playground to the pros. And in our industry, we call this sales acceleration. Sales acceleration is not just a piece of software, it's a system, it's a platform, so you can reach the right customers in the right way at the right time. We understand your need to progress, and we believe that science is the key to measure, anticipate, and accelerate.
All right, well, great. We're just waiting for people to get logged in here for a little bit. If you guys want to go ahead and just give us a shout out, we'd like to know where people are calling in from today. Let us know where you're at, and we'll get started here in just a second. We're really excited to have on today's program Connie Kadansky. She's the president of Exceptional Sales Performance, and we're going to hear a little bit more from her in a minute, and she's going to do a self-intro. We also have Bryce Leishman on, our Senior Sales Development Manager from InsideSales.com. We want to thank you guys for joining us live. We know that you guys have busy days, so for those of you who are taking the time to join us, we really appreciate it. We have a little bit of housekeeping that we'd like to go over here and how this webinar is going to work. It's going to be just about an hour with our Q&A at the end. We have a Q&A box. It looks like we're getting some people on the Q&A box letting us know where they're from. It looks like we've got Michael calling in from Mountain View, and we have Norman from Kansas on the line, and Corey from Kansas City. We've even got Heather from Amsterdam, New York. We got anybody out there from international, not from the U.S.? Lima, Peru. We've got Jose from Lima, Peru. Thanks for joining us, everybody. So I'm glad you guys are getting used to using the Q&A box, because we're going to be using it throughout the presentation at the end during the question and answer. Feel free to write down some action items, because these guys have some really great tips today on call reluctance and overcoming some of your fears and helping your sales team overcome their fears. And just to let you guys know, this is being recorded, and we're going to email you guys out the link at the end of the broadcast today. So Connie's on the line with us, and Connie, I want to pass it over to you now and let you do kind of a self-intro here, answering some of these questions that we've put up here for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So a fun fact about me, I facilitated a public speaking workshop for the women in Parliament in Rwanda through a French interpreter. It was a whole lot of fun. And my role in Motive today is to facilitate a learning on a very specific topic that costs companies big bucks. And I want to highlight that as I share, I'm going to be sharing about behaviors and not about labeling people. I so want you to hear that, because we honor all people and appreciate them. So I may be reminding that about you for a couple of times there. My first sales job, don't get nervous, my first sales job was at 5 years old. I was selling poppies on Veterans Day. So here in the United States, it's Veterans Day, so it's an anniversary, and I had more fun than playing with my Pekingese puppy. I went on to sell through a newspaper route, and I loved the contest that would get new subscribers, and I sold newspaper advertising. And in 1997, I was experiencing call reluctance, that emotional hesitation to prospect and self-promote. I did an internet search, and I found a book, The Psychology of Sales Call Reluctance. Some of you may own that book. And I worked through my call reluctance, and I was so drawn to the science and the need for people to be out there sharing the solution on the call reluctance issue that I became a licensee for the two behavioral scientists out of Dallas who actually own that trademark. So for 17 years, I've been working with companies and individuals throughout the United States and globally on identifying and addressing the sales call reluctance issues that keep them from getting where they want to go. So I walk my talk, I prospect consistently, and I know what it's like to not get a response, to get cranky people on the line once in a while, to get thrown into voicemail. And I also know the thrill of the opportunity and connecting with people who value my services, because it's just the right time with the right person, isn't it? So my content today is we're going to be zeroing in on the number one type of call reluctance. There are 12 different types. We're going to just isolate it to the one that is the most costly, and it's scientifically based on 40 years of experience. So I have found over the years that there are some sales managers who can coach and develop people through their call reluctance, especially the one we're talking about today, and others who have just zero tolerance. So the solution can truly reside within that manager or trainer and their level of understanding about the complexity and knowing that it can be a little bit complicated, but it is possible to help people to retrain their brains, because that's really what it is. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Perfect, Connie. That was a great introduction. A lot of great experiences, it sounds like, with your selling, even starting at 5 years old on Veterans Day. Appreciate that intro. We're going to pass it over to Bryce now and let him do a little quick intro on his background.
Thanks, Mike. Just wanted to give you guys just a quick intro about me. A fun fact, I'm a pretty avid outdoorsman. I live here in Utah. And after being newly married, I took my wife camping for the first time. And where we camped happened to be down in a little valley with a river running through it. And twice in the same night, the same bull moose happened to run us out of our camp. And we ended up just driving home in the middle of the night in our PJs. So for all you adventure seekers out there, Utah is jam-packed full of everything that you'd want, including maybe a little more than you'd want. Just a little bit about my role. I'm currently the Senior Sales Manager of Business Development at InsideSales.com. And, you know, I say business development. Some people call it sales development. It's really one and the same. I started my sales career in the B2B world, knocking doors for a living as a college student back when I was getting a chemistry degree. And what I ended up doing there was managing teams of people, but really where I found my sweet spot is for the last few years I've been working in the B2B realm, where I've rapidly gained experience as both a rep and a manager in both sales and sales development. And really it's because of my rather comprehensive experience on all sides of the aisle that I've become an expert in all things sales and sales development. And you know, I've gained a diverse experience in the trenches of a hyper-growth company, and that's really enabled me to provide cross-functional solutions that, you know, work in both sales and sales development, and in those specialized models where that handoff has to happen. You know, it's important that you have people that can see both sides of the aisle clearly, and you know, it's helped me to keep the organizations I'm a part of aligned and growing at 100% year over year. And today, I'm going to be sharing briefly with you guys just some of the tools and the processes that you need to have in place to overcome some of the issues that Connie's going to be addressing today.
Perfect. Thanks, Bryce. Well, we want to do what's called a pulse check with everybody right now, and just see if everybody is ready to go ahead and start this webinar. And just go ahead and push the thumbs up if you guys are ready, and let us know that you're ready for Connie and her content. Like we got a good percentage coming in here. About half of you guys are ready. All right, let's do this. Connie, are you ready?
I am.
All right, it's all yours.
Thank you. Yes. So are your salespeople too nice to close the deal? And what we're talking about today is the yielder call reluctance. That's the behavior. And oftentimes people that experience this type of call reluctance have close reluctance. So they dance all the way up to the close, and then they back off and stop. I love this quote by George Clooney. And this is something for salespeople to look at too. I had to stop going to auditions thinking, oh, I hope they like me. I had to go in thinking I was the answer to their problem. He is talking right there about a particular mindset that is required in order to be an exceptional salesperson. The people that experience the sales call reluctance from the yielder side, they are too focused on wanting to be liked and approved of. And that's where they get a little bit sideways in their sales career. We're going to go ahead and launch this first poll here. What is the number one reason why salespeople fail to close the sale?
Connie, are you still there? Did we lose you?
No, I'm here. I'm just
Oh,
looking
great.
at yes, so should I go ahead and close this out? I'm seeing that we still have people that are
Still answering the poll.
responding.
Let's give them a couple seconds more, and then let's push it to the next slide and see what the answers are.
Okay. I'm closing it out. We'll go to the next slide here. So what we're looking at here, as you can see, they don't uncover the real needs, don't follow a process of trying to avoid rejection, and are unwilling to ask for the order. So those of you that said that, you are exactly right on, the 45% of you, because believe it or not, this is the number one reason. Salespeople believe that they ask for the order more than they actually do. And in fact, they never even ask the first time, much less enough times. They're probably trying to avoid rejection, avoid the no, avoid that potential failure, or listen to this, because the discipline of asking has not been developed yet. So it is a discipline of asking. Many salespeople that are unable to ask are operating under the false belief. That's the mindset that if they are just nice salespeople, they will get the order. And only a very small percentage of people will actually buy without being asked. And most will only buy after you've asked more than once. So if salespeople are unwilling to ask for the order, they only get the leftovers of those that are professionally trained to ask for the order. So that's good news that for you sales managers to know it is a discipline to ask for the order. So what is required for salespeople to have a really exceptional sales career? These things must be in place, and they can be developed. So the mindset is really that the definition of selling is finding and solving people's problems for a profit. And when we can embrace that's what selling is, and also having that open learner mindset and realizing that opportunities are everywhere and deciding to enjoy the adventure. So mindset is made up of beliefs, perspectives, assumptions, and also having that inner critic in check because that inner critic is definitely can be part of what's going on with the people who suffer from the yielder call reluctance. And then we all need a heart set. What do I mean by that? Is having that particular recognition that prospects are people and not objects. So at any given time, each and every one of us are seeing people as people or people as objects. So what do I mean by that? When we see people as objects, we're seeing them as obstacles. An example is how many of you get frustrated with that gatekeeper? Are you seeing that particular individual as an obstacle and an object? Yes. So open up and say, hey, it's a gate opener. They are an individual. I'm going to treat them the way that I would treat my ultimate prospect. Or we see people as vehicles that are going to get us where we want to go, but we're still not seeing them as people. And then the third way that we see people as objects is irrelevancies. And how many times when you're out there in the sales world that you may be thinking that particular individual may be irrelevant, and you find out that they really have a pretty high-ranking role in the decision-making and influencing process. So to be able to really know and consistently improving your level of competency and recognizing that the relationship is important, but it is a delicate balance, because too many times the people that experience that yielder call reluctance are thinking that the relationship building is the most important. So you cannot depend on relationship building skills alone. You have to hone and develop them, but sometimes we have to remember that there's a delicate balance there. So don't get me wrong, relationships are important, but sometimes we put too much emphasis on that. And then everybody needs a process. When the biggest messes, and I know this from coaching salespeople, the biggest messes are people that have deviated from their process or are not following their process. And that's part of why the technologies are so important, because they really keep people tight and within a process. And then to always working on the skill set, consistently improving your competency level and getting better every day in every way that really moves you into mastery. So that is the foundation of a successful sales career. So people who really are exceptionally good at the sales, in the sales arena, they really know and believe that they personally are valuable and their product and service is valuable. They just know it. And when you know your value, you're unstoppable. You're resilient and unstoppable. And then also they recognize the visibility is important. They manage their visibility. And they also know that it's important to be vocal. So the 3 V's, valuable, visible, and vocal, is part of the mindset of a salesperson that is exceptionally convinced of their own value. And guess what? Their confidence breeds confidence in their prospect. So let's talk about what actually happens in the sales dynamic. You're talking to a prospect, and they have their current reality in their own mind, right? Their perspective. And they may be busy and taking detours and have a lot of questions and not really know. And you are wanting to move them into a desired result for them, which also includes the desired result for you, that you're going to be able to sell them something that's going to be of value to them. So moving people from a point A to a point B. Now notice in the middle there's that box that says creative tension. And in most sales situations, it does require some creative tension from the salesperson in order to get that prospect to move. And what do I mean by that? Is to be able to ask questions that are going to possibly make them a little bit uncomfortable. And people that experience the yielder call reluctance often do not like to make their prospect uncomfortable. They do not like any potential conflict. So it's just recognizing that in most cases we do need to ask questions. So, for instance, if you're talking to somebody about what they want to achieve and what it means to them, what it's going to mean to their company, and everything's going along real well, you find out why they haven't been able to implement, etc. And then a question that would create some tension would be, what is at stake if you do nothing? So that's the kind of creative tension. And when it comes out of your mouth, they doubt it. When it comes out of their mouth, it's true. And you are much closer to getting them moved to that point B, that desired result, where they're a happy customer and they're feeling good about you or your service or your product. So we're going to go ahead and move into our second poll here. We have 4 polls total for today. Thank you for participating. So go ahead and answer this question here, please. Give you a few more seconds here. We have people answering. I'm going to go out and go ahead and close out. Not everyone has answered, but we'll move on. Okay, so many of you are saying, yes, it really is important to be able to create that tension, and that's where that assertiveness comes in and that comfortability in making other people, making your prospect uncomfortable in order to get them to move. So that's there. Let's talk about, here's something that I believe, I haven't had too many people discount this, that 70% of the sale is in engagement and uncovering the needs. Once we've done that, it's not that difficult. And in having the technology such as what Inside Sales provides, they really help and assist the salesperson in that engagement process to know who is really paying attention in their prospect world. Oops, I'm going to go back here. So when we're talking about uncovering needs, we really go to finding out what's going on with our prospect, right? And what I find is most salespeople will get a few little superficial details, a few little facts, maybe an opinion or two, and then they jump in with the solution, because it takes some work to really get that prospect to tell you what is it going to mean to them to be able to solve the issue, solve their problem. And you've got to just stay with them, do some restating, do some really good listening, and find out exactly what it's going to mean. So you have a vice president that says, what this is going to mean to me is that I'm going to be able to spend more time with my family because I'm working on reports all weekend or something like that. But that's what I'm talking about, is to zero in on what's important to them. Now, people that experience that sales call reluctance in the yielder realm oftentimes do not want to be too intrusive. I don't want to be too intrusive here. And so it does take some skill development in learning how to uncover those needs at the deepest level that you possibly can, instead of moving into your solution and diagnosing too early. So a salesperson that experiences the yield or call reluctance, and you're getting a feel for it, aren't you? They're afraid of being considered pushy or intrusive. They feel that they want to wait for just the right time to contact people. They elevate rapport building above closing. They avoid conflict, which really interferes with assertive selling. So when it comes time to name the price or answer objections, they kind of really are not comfortable with that. So when you look at this, the person that has that kind of behavior, they're qualifying instead of uncovering. They're talking instead of listening. They make a lot of assumptions instead of questioning, because sometimes it takes some assertiveness to ask that question. They stay silent when somebody's contradicting themselves. So it does take courage to say, wait a minute, I remember you saying X. And the yield or call reluctance, they prescribe prior to diagnosing. The assertive salesperson who has a process and controls their process, they will only diagnose after they totally understand at the depth of the issue. And seen through the offering lenses instead of seen through the problem lens. So those are the differentiators for you sales trainers and sales managers to recognize. So having that process, controlling that process, and being very assertive within their process. So where does call reluctance come from? I get this question all the time, so I'm going to go ahead and share with you that it comes from three places. There are some people that definitely are predisposed to the type of behavior that I'm sharing with you today. They just want to be liked, approved of, etc. It can be hereditary. I was working with a salesperson the other day that had some yield or call reluctance, and she goes, my parents really dislike salespeople. So she's got some hereditary component there, too, that she's battling against. But most importantly, call reluctance comes from exposure to people with call reluctance. Call reluctance is contagious. And the number one carriers of call reluctance, are you ready for this? Guess what? Sales trainers, sales managers, and motivational speakers. So we have to be careful as sales managers and trainers that we're not contaminating the very people that we intend to inspire with our call reluctance. And that is definitely documented in research. So the different mindsets here, there are some salespeople who have the mindset and are most comfortable being account managers, where they are very, very good with just keeping people happy, making sure they have everything they need. And then there are the account developers. It's a different mindset, a different skill set, isn't it? And so can people that are account managers move into account developers? Yes, they can if they truly want that and they see the value in that. It is entirely possible. Now, here's a question. It's our third poll for today. Go ahead, and we're just going to ask a closed-ended question here. Waiting for a few more people to jump in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this and share the results. Wow, we have a pretty even percentage here. So the venerable sales trainer, Brian Tracy, many of you have probably heard of him. This is something that he says, that the ability to obtain a commitment is the end game in selling. And he says if you do everything else well except for this, in his view, you still fail. So oftentimes in our conversations, we're not moving people from that first conversation to closing the deal. We're moving them to the next step, getting them to make a commitment to take some kind of action to move to the next step. So that's going to be interesting if there are questions on this and even comments on the people that commented no, what your thoughts are on that one. So there are 4 steps to help people overcome this yield or call reluctance. Number 1 is to be aware of it. And how do you know you're aware of it? They're just not closing the sales the way that you want them. To actually assess, I'm going to give you some hints on assessing whether they have that call reluctance and what to do. And there's also an assessment that measures for the call reluctance, and it will tell you what degree of intensity is this yield or call reluctance in this particular individual. And the 4th step is to admit it. And sometimes this is the hardest, to get people to just admit that they're experiencing this yielder type of call reluctance. So they're yielding to others what is in their best interest and also what's in the best interest for their prospect to move them into the sale. And then to apply proven techniques to overcome that particular type of call reluctance. So awareness is aware when people are yielding, when there's that little small voice inside is saying, go ahead and ask that question, and then they just put the brakes on it and they do not do what they have been trained to do or they've role-played to do. So they're yielding in what is their best interest. And also, just like I said, what's in best interest of their prospect. So here's how the assessment, not assertive in making recommendations or asking for the business. So that's how it shows up. They have no response to let me think it over. So if somebody's getting a let me think it over, we know that they did not do a very good job on the needs analysis. They did not go deep enough, or they did not contract enough ahead of time in the very beginning as far as what the purpose of the meeting was. They often engage in excessive amounts of visiting or chit-chat. They're trying to get comfortable. They're trying to make it friendly and folksy, but there's just a little too much of that friendly folksy. And here's a question. What happens if we encounter a prospect who really prefers a very quick, strictly business, product-centered interactions over relationship building? And we all have prospects that are like that, and they're not into all this excessive amount of visiting and chit-chat. They leave appointments without getting firm commitment for the next step. Oh, give me a call next week. Oh, send me something in the mail, right? Instead of being very assertive on let's set a time, let's get it in our calendar. Should I put it in my calendar with a pen or with pencil, and to be able to really to nab that next appointment down before you get off the phone. Because if not, guess what? We end up chasing that prospect, and there's nothing worse in the world than to chase somebody down. They can have unanswered questions that they were afraid to ask. And those are usually the ones that could create some of that tension within the prospect. They just don't want to be intrusive and ask those. And then they string out closing the sale. So those are some of the behaviors that we do see. Another one on the sales call, they just rapport building, time-consuming tangents, where before they know it, their time's up and they didn't get through their presentation. They have a tendency to want to be friendly so they don't sound pushy or close-oriented, and usually not taking control of the call. And then another one is they do not have pattern interrupts planned when they are prospecting. So what do I mean by that? Oftentimes prospects have a reflexive no answer. And we need to have those interrupts those pattern interrupts, that interrupts that no, that takes them into a different place so that we can redirect that conversation. And I believe that every salesperson needs to have at least 3 of those in order to continue that moving forward, because that reflexive no is just part of the prospect. But to be able to guide them and redirect them, and that, guess what that does? That takes some assertiveness and also some role plays in order to do that. So getting people to admit this is be gentle. We're all works in progress. We don't want to ever punish people or admonish them for their behavior, and because it's kind of like the way that they're wired right now, and you can work with them. So be gentle, but be assertive, and they're work in progress, but continue to move it forward. And here's what I found: The Psychology of Sales Call Reluctance. You can get this book on Amazon Prime for less than I can send it to you, and everybody that is in a sales position needs this book. These are the 2 behavioral scientists that wrote it, and what you can do is there's a section in there, it's only 6 pages, about the yielder call reluctance. You can give that book to your particular salesperson, say, read this, and we're going to have a discussion. Because when they can recognize the behavior, read about the behavior, they can start knowing that it's part of their process that is not serving them well, and just by reading that can oftentimes move them off the dime into admission and recognizing that there is a solution for them. Now I'm going to move into applying the proven techniques. And sometimes this is what I found over my 17 years, that people believe the solution needs to be as complicated as they've made their problem. So I'm going to share some things. I'm not saying that it is simple to help people to overcome this yielder behavior. Sometimes it can be. It depends on their motivation and their goal level, their emotional connection to what is important to them. But what I'm going to share with you may sound simple, and I'm asking you and requesting that you be open and not diminish it as, that's too simple. Because sometimes it's just the simple things that can truly help people move forward. So everything starts out with a thought. So, for example, if you have a salesperson that says, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to be intrusive. Oh, if I call them back, I'm going to be a pest. I'm going to sound too much like a salesperson. So that's what is their mindset. That is what is going on in their head, which triggers a feeling. So anytime we say, I don't want, guess what? We're in fear. Fear is a mental response to a perceived threat. Did you make a note on that? It's so important, a mental response to a perceived threat. So that thought makes people feel a little bit of anxiety, apprehension, and then the feeling moves you into action. So what do? Is you back off. You don't do what you know you need to do. So the goal here is to help people realign their thinking. I could spend an hour on this one, but today I'm giving you a broad overview here. Because whatever people are thinking becomes their belief, their mindset. And whatever we believe, we create situations to validate that belief. So there are salespeople that believe that they're very good at engaging people, and guess what? They create situations to validate. There are people that believe that they can create a advocate with that gatekeeper, that gate opener, and guess what? They prove it to be true. And there are other people that just moan and groan about voicemails and gatekeepers. Well, it's because they have a thought that is creating that. And whatever our belief and mindset becomes our expectation or our attitude. So here's an example. if you have somebody that says, oh, I just don't want to be too pushy, what you do is you ask them to, what are other options on that particular perspective? And you have to coax it out of them. So if you don't want to be pushy, what do you want? Get them focused on what they want and coax it. Well, I want to create value in the mind of the prospect. I want to be good at developing a trust with them so they will share with me. So you redirect that and they start having a completely different experience. So it usually doesn't happen once or twice, but you keep working and it can actually do that. So asking for options there. And then here's another thing with people who are lacking assertiveness is they get their wires crossed on what is aggressive, what is assertive, and what is passive. And this is some homework that you actually ask them to look it up in the dictionary. What is aggressive, what is assertive, and what is passive? And where you are finding that they're not being assertive enough, ask them to write out, if they were aggressive, what would it sound like? If they were assertive, what would it sound like? And if they were passive, what would it sound like? And with that kind of homework and discussion, they really will start understanding what does it mean when you are asking them to be more assertive. Because right now they think, oh my gosh, they're asking me to be aggressive, and I do not want to be aggressive. So I'd be willing to take any questions you have in that regard too there. Let's see. So, let me just back up here. So here's that too. It's really creating an inner dialogue change where anytime somebody says, I am, and they use a negative descriptor after I am frustrated, I am angry, I am upset, I am can't think of anything else right now, is to really help them to change that I am experiencing, that's the key word, I am experiencing frustration. However, frustration is not who I am. And what is this doing is it's helping them neutralize the negative emotion, and you're going to find out later here why that is so important physiologically. So I'm experiencing frustration because I'm not meeting my goals. It's a completely different experience for them, and the solution is so much closer than being just all caught up in embracing that particular negative emotion. I'm afraid of being too pushy. I'm experiencing fear. Sounds a little like psychobabble, doesn't it? But it isn't. It is a psychologically proven technique. I'm experiencing fear when it comes to asking for a committed next step. However, fear is not who I am. So it's neutralizing that negative emotion, and it's distancing the negative emotion, and it helps people really understand and start shifting their perspective, shifting their mindset, their beliefs, their assumptions that are costing them money. So role play, as you know, is so important. People do not like it, but it works. I am such a believer in role play, and it just needs to be part of your process where 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it doesn't need to be long, but to be able to even record the role plays so that you can really work on that. So looking at the time here, I'm going to make it real quick. In the middle of our brain, we have a hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is the chemical factory of the brain. Every thought you think, the hypothalamus secretes hormones to match that thought. So right here, this is what it looks like. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you, but anyway, so with that, I'm getting a notice here that we are running a little bit long, so I'm going to share with you about the chemical factory in the brain. So whatever you're thinking, your hypothalamus is secreting hormones to match that thought. So Ann Cuddy, a social psychologist and Harvard Business School professor, research show that by standing in a power pose, you can increase your confidence. So confidence is transforming fear into focus-related thinking, communication, and action. So it's a pose that takes up physical space, is communicating to yourself. And when you strike these poses for 60 seconds a day, it starts releasing hormones that affect how you think and how you feel. So they have high testosterone, which is the dominance hormone, and low cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and the combination of those equals power plus confidence. So just 60 seconds a day here can help those people that you're working with become more confident. And they can do this in the elevator, in the bathroom stall, behind a desk, behind closed doors. And if you're more interested in this, there's a Google Ann Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y. It's a TED Talk. It's been translated into 38 different languages there. So I'm going to go ahead and just 60 seconds a day, I'm going to go ahead and skip that. We'll skip that next poll here. And this is who I am. I provide coaching, speaking, assessments around the call reluctance. And I will now turn this over to Bryce.
Thank you, Connie. Let's see. So I think really where I need to start, and I'll be quick for the sake of everybody's time so we can get some questions in here at the end. But more than anything, you need to first understand the way I believe and how it defines the way I approach a problem. And I pulled this quote from Inside Sales where I happen to work because I'm so perfectly aligned to it. It really describes the way I see the world. And really, we believe science holds the key to unlocking human potential and improving the performance of sales teams. And you really don't have to look far to see examples where science is already being used to unlock human potential. For instance, the level of sophistication that goes into the physical training of a professional athlete, for instance. Just consider nowadays we have dozens of studies and even books that have been dedicated to something as simple as running, which has resulted in really in the last century alone, we've been able to shave 31 seconds off of the fastest mile. So please just stick with me and view the world the way I do, which is really through this lens of science, and that it's the foundation of how I approach increasing sales and solving problems, such as call reluctance like we're talking about today. So just really quick, the things we're going to talk about are people and how you can use the right hiring methods and techniques and tools, training and accountability, practices, and tools. So just to jump in this real quick, with people, first and foremost, does anybody know, you can put this in the feed here, the approximate number of people attaining quota on a regular basis, on a monthly basis? Inside your own company, inside all companies averaged, it's actually 61%. So you have to take a step back and say, well, probably the easiest way to make more money in my company is just by getting more people hitting quota. And we couldn't agree more. In fact, we've taken data science and we've used it to identify different characteristics in top performers. And the best assessment tools, which is what I'm recommending you use here first, which is really solving or avoiding the problem of call reluctance, is getting the right people in the right seat to start with. And the best tools, they take in crazy amounts of data and they can produce dangerously accurate predictions. And the ones that we're familiar with in our industry, they can predict with 90% accuracy the quota attainment some rep is going to produce. In fact, the one displayed here on the screen says this rep is going to hit 159% of quota. That's the kind of person you want to be hiring. And the best tools will also take in the data of your own company. You have an assessment and you have your reps take it to calibrate it. So what it ends up doing is factoring in all the idiosyncrasies of your market, your industry, your products, and everything that applies. And that assessment is now tuned to the performance of your team specifically. And now you have any candidates, you come in, take that assessment, and it's going to predict how likely they are to be good on the team selling your products in your world at that time. Next, you really need visibility into your team's activities so you can identify where they're having a breakdown. Then you can train and coach them up and hold them accountable. And as an example, the way I use data in the context of call reluctance is I will watch each day reps' productivity. And if I see dials, for instance, unusually low for a rep, this is something I have my managers paying attention to. And if at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's one rep who's just dangerously low, there's something going on there. Did they have a terrible call, a bad experience that they haven't been able to bounce back from, where call reluctance has frozen them where they stand now? If you have the right tools in place, you can recognize when people are having issues, and you can go in and you can solve that problem. You can save it before the whole day is lost, in fact, before another hour is lost. So what's critical here is having CRMs and integrated dialing tools that can auto-capture things like calls made and durations, so that you can then go back and coach and train your people based on data. Really, the next thing I'd just like to highlight really quick here is with practices, is it's all about, now that you have the right people, you need to get them doing the right things at the right times. And there's a fallacy out there, I'll call it that you can create your own luck. I think that's really just being smarter than everybody else. And you can win by being smarter and working harder, but we're going to focus here on what it takes to really be smarter. And it's adhering to the natural laws and the best practices. And we, as a company, publish them all the time. In fact, I highly recommend you go and download the free downloads that are in your feed right now, where you're looking on your screen. But what we've done is I've just thrown one on here that relates to call reluctance, and I'm going to focus on just a couple of things in terms of best practices that address that problem acutely. If your reps are struggling and they are not sure when to react to somebody because they're afraid of, is this person likely to be angry, happy, upset, or buy, you can give them a tool, such as we have here on the right-hand side. That's an email tracking tool that we have, but there's dozens of them out there. And if your reps know, okay, I sent this proposal a week ago, what they've done with that is they opened it once and then nothing else. That's a pretty cold situation. I'm nervous going into that call. And I'm completely blind to, maybe they have passed it around. Maybe they are talking about it. I don't know. But if you have this email tracking tool that tells you, okay, they've done nothing with it, but they just opened it today. In fact, when they opened it, they must have sent it to 3 other people, because now I'm getting 3 other people opening that proposal. So I'm going into that call so much more confident. I have the focus and the energy to go in that power pose, as Connie says, to take command of that situation, because I know I'm on top and I'm in control, because I can see the digital body language, for instance, of the person who is on the other end of that email, which is something we've to date just been blind to. So these are incredible tools to helping solve some of these problems, like call reluctance. The other graph here on the left is just simply, if you have inbound demand generation, you can empower your reps to increase the number of people they can get to answer their calls just by responding immediately. This is something that we published a long time ago that we believe wholeheartedly in, and we've built entire platforms and pieces of technology around how do you respond immediately to somebody who raises their hand and says, I am interested. I can tell you the reps on my team are dying to get these kinds of leads. They are never hesitating to talk to somebody who just interacted with us, because about half of the time they're picking up the phone versus, the industry average ranges anywhere from 10 to 20. Going on here, the last thing I'll talk about briefly is tools. Really, I'll speed through this. Everybody knows how important gamification is nowadays. It's a buzzword. The best tools that you can use are going to be ones that give instant gratification. They rank people so there's a competitive factor. And then last, at the bottom here, you're going to see there's a couple of different ideas. These will be sent out to everybody who wants to come back and review these. But really, being a data and science company, we believe you can take big data, learn from that, and know who is going to be your best lead from your own historical successes. It takes massive computations to pull all this together, but we've got teams of PhDs that have built the algorithms that can make this really simple for a user to where all they have to do is look at a list and work at from top to bottom. We also use things like local presence. So you've got a local number anywhere you call. That gives a rep confidence because they're getting more people on the phone. And all these things kind of work together along with automation to really keep your rep moving forward in a groove. If they've got energy, if they've got momentum and inertia, nothing's going to slow them down. And that success will continue to breed success. And there's tools that you can get from many different sources. I suggest you shop around, you look and you see what you can find. We've built a suite of tools that all works in concert. That these things, they really provide a synergy to one another if you use them. And you can feel free to check us out on our website. If you have any questions, please post them directly for me. But when these tools are used in concert, we see things to the effect of 32% increases in close rates. And reps, they've overcome the call reluctance issue long before that because they've got so much success and energy to drive them and the automation to keep things moving forward. So that's all I have for you. If you guys have any questions, please post them for me, and we'll see what we can do to help you out.
Great. Thanks, Bryce. We are almost, we're about 4 minutes to the top of the hour, and so there's just a few housekeeping things here. We're going to send you guys a link of today's recording. I'm going to talk to Connie afterwards and see if she's okay with us sending out the slides and Bryce, and if they're okay with us sending out the slides, then I'll also email those to you guys as well. Feel free to take advantage of the free downloads. We have a couple of ebooks, one on cold calling tips, $1 Million Secrets, and gamification on the right-hand side of your console, and then an awesome video on one of our products called Power Dialer. And then if you guys are interested, on a demo, just feel free to reach out to us. Bryce and Connie, are you guys okay? And I know we're approaching the top of the hour. Do you guys have a few more minutes to take Q&A if we went 5 or 10 minutes over, and then we can let whoever needs to go, and then whoever wants to stay can stay for Q&A for a couple minutes?
I do.
Sure.
Bryce? Okay. All right, well, we'll just roll into some Q&A now. So if you guys want to, if anybody wants to throw a question in the Q&A box, we've also accumulated some as we've been going along. That were kind of sent out to the speakers that we'll let them answer now. And so I will throw some of these out to you guys. Get over to my Q&A box here. Connie, I think quite a few of these are for you. And the first one is, are there some salespeople who just cannot become more assertive?
Unfortunately, yes. Sometimes they just are better at customer service than sales. So, yes, that happens sometimes.
Great. We had a question come in from Angela, and she says, I know I'm guilty of call reluctance. I came into sales after a 25-year career and have had no training. Are there some books you would recommend to develop a process?
A process, a sales process, or just the call reluctance? The Psychology of Sales Call Reluctance has all the solutions around the call reluctance, so that would be the book to get.
Perfect. We also had a question come in from Ellen. She said, this was during your presentation, Connie. She said, can you give an example of a pattern interrupt?
Yes. Oh, that's a good question. So a pattern interrupt, when somebody says, well, we already have that, and then to be able to divert them into, oh, that's such a good question, isn't it? I am, like, for right now, I am not thinking of it, but if you want to, Ellen, send me your email and I'll send you, I've written an article, I should have pulled that, but to be able to just ask them what they're currently doing, or what is it that that particular individual is doing for them that that is not working, or something like that. So I can be definitely more specific, but for some reason right now it's just not popping up.
Great. We'll connect you and Ellen then. We can take these questions and share them with you. All right, the next one. Go to here's one from Mantis. He says, "How do you overcome the age factor when hiring salespeople to a real estate agency?" Actually, we're going to pass on that one. So what does it take for a salesperson to really know their value?
Well, to work with people in their company that really understand the value of the product and the service, and mentor the people that are not getting their value, and be around people that are very proud of the profession and passionate about the profession. So oftentimes just being in an environment where people get their value, and then also work with them on understanding their particular uniqueness of what they bring to the table. Sometimes people just diminish and don't even recognize it, but to look at their background and recognize what's the value of your background experience that you really do bring to the table when you're talking to prospects.
Thank you. This is one that, Bryce, you might be able to weigh in as a manager that has to deal with this. It comes from Tiffany, and she says, "For those salespeople who have been burned below metrics and not meeting quota, how do you build morale?"
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we kind of have a rule that we go by. I mean, you always have to be building a person up. If you've been coaching somebody and you've been giving them negative feedback, you're already losing the battle. If you've continued to use what we use as an internal rule of 3 to 1, 3 positive comments to any 1 corrective one, you're in a position now to where you can go in and work with that rep and show them the success of other reps and map it out for them. And we're very data driven, so we'll show them really, here's what they're doing, here's how often they're using this keyword that's making them successful. Let's try using that. And really, I map it back to the success of their peer where they can see firsthand things working. And, I might even pull that rep off and have them shadow and learn from and take the stress of today's work off, and you're just going to work on you as an individual and learn what you need to from the most successful people on the team.
How about you, Connie? Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, I think that's good. Thank you.
Perfect.
And if I could I just answer the pattern interrupt one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So a pattern interrupt, if somebody says, well, I'm not interested, and say, I see, so what are you experiencing with, and it just depends on whatever industry that you are in. So if somebody's in financial services, well, what are you experiencing in your returns? Or we're already working with somebody like you. Oh, I understand, and how is that relationship working out for you? Or one of the time is like, we don't need that. And you say, oh, well, when is the last time you looked at something similar? So everything is different. All industries are different. So it does take some customization there to create pattern interrupts. So hopefully that answered that one.
Perfect. That's a great answer. Thanks for coming back with that. Here's a question from Edwin for Bryce. He says, what assessment tools do you provide or can I use to leverage big data to help identity top performer even before I hire, or identify top performers before I hire?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for posting that. The 2 particular tools that we use, and they're ones that we've built here, and one that we acquired, the other that we've built, and they are both based on big data. One is called Sales Indicator, and that's the one that has been identified, and we pulled a resident psychologist, a tenured professor from a university around here, and as a PhD, we used his insights to identify the most influential behaviors, and not like surface level characteristics, but behaviors of individuals, and which behaviors are most indicative of the right of sales performance. Things like resilience and empathy and openness to learning new things. And what we found across the board is there's really these 5 most significant things, and the sales indicator tool is going to more or less create a fingerprint for each person who takes the assessment. And you may have a score of 50 in one area, a 70 in another area, a 38 in another, and 100 in another, and that could be a perfect score, somebody who's going to be an absolute top performer. It's not that you're 100 in all areas. So this is an assessment tool that can't be gamed just by saying, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to put high scores in all areas. It's one that a low score in one area might make you fit the mold of a top performer, because remember, this tool is being tuned by your current reps taking it, and your top performers, their fingerprint gets impressed on it. It learns from that, it adapts, and now any future candidates get matched up against them. The other is personogenics, and it's one that it's looking at the type of communication styles as well as the personality styles. And we use that one as much for in-house understanding how to communicate one to another as we do for understanding and communicating to somebody who we're going to sell to. But those are the 2 specifically that you can definitely call in, and we'd even put together a demonstration for you personally if you'd like.
Great, thanks, Bryce. Man, we are getting a ton of questions, but I think this is probably the last one that we'll take today. This one comes from, looks like it's Kari, and it says, what are some good role-playing topics? Connie, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So good role-playing topics is anywhere where somebody has a hesitation or freezes. So any time that somebody responds, gives them an objection, or anything that causes them to slow up, even getting through and communicating and articulating their message, getting through the gatekeeper. So it's all good role-playing topic for that in that regard. And to be able to work it out and make it smooth. And I'm a big believer in 3 people involved in the role play. So you have a salesperson, a prospect, and an observer, and all of them are involved in the discussion around the role play.
Perfect, thanks. Well, I want to just thank everybody for joining us today, and I want to thank Connie and Bryce for the time that they've taken to put together this content for us. We hope that you guys are able to share this with your sales teams, and that it'll help you overcome their call reluctance. Connie and Bryce, anything to add before we sign off?
Well, I'll close with opportunities are never lost. The ones you miss, go to somebody else.
I love that. Bryce?
No, thank you guys for attending today, and let us know if you have any more questions. We're more than happy to reach out afterward.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day selling.